Part of what I do on this show is try to look at all situations from all possible perspectives and try to break through the left-right paradigm that distracts us from the most hard-hitting issues in this country. So to help me do just that, I'm now joined by former governor of Minnesota and author of Democrips and Rebloodlicans, No More Gangs in Government, Jesse Ventura himself. Jesse, thanks so much for coming on the show today. My first question is, in light of the DNC just ending, the RNC, to me, it seems like these ridiculous conventions that cost billions of dollars for taxpayers are just pretty much a giant charade, a dog and pony show to perform some ritual to pretty much appease people into thinking that they really have a choice in who they choose for president. What do you think about just the conventions and just what they serve for the country?
They're exactly what you said. They're nothing more than political theater. If you put the lie meter on them, I think one media person did, and they found that half the stuff they talked about wasn't even true. They just get up there and tell the people what they think they want to hear, and it's all a complete show, if you ask me. There's no substance to it whatsoever. They make grandiose promises and all this stuff, which will never come true.
And Jesse, I used to be entrenched in the two-party system. I campaigned for Kerry, embarrassingly enough, in 2004. And then I woke up to him pretty much taking a dive. He said he'd have lawyers on the ground in Ohio. He was going to count every vote. And then he gave this concession speech. And then that's when I really woke up, hey, there's something very, very wrong with the two-party system. What was your turning point as someone who was actually entrenched in the system, in the establishment, the governor of Minnesota? What was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for you, where you were like, I'm done,
Well,
woke up?
You know what, there was no straw that broke the camel's back with me. I mean, I did one term, and I'm the type of person that believes in term limits, and I believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and I believe that career politicians are the problem. So I generally do one term, and then I go back to what I used to do. I like to refer to myself as a statesman. And what really gets me about it is there's no difference between the two parties. They're bought and sold. They've created a system that's based completely upon bribery. Now, if we do bribery in the private sector, we go to jail. But it's the status quo in the public sector, and it's kind of funny, too. They talk about competition is good in the private sector, yet in the public sector in our elections, it's been 20 years now since we've even heard a third voice for the presidency of the United States.
And in your book, Jesse, and it really is the two-tiered justice system, you just pointed it out, hit it right on the head there. Corporations and politicians are beholden to a different set of laws than the average American is. And in your book, you call them pretty much gangs. The Bloods and the Crips, you cite the Republicans and Democrats as analogous to pretty much gangs. You cite people like Elizabeth Warren as pretty much an anomaly in the system. But Jesse, in the light of, we have the Occupy Wall Street movement, whether or not you agree with the message that they had, look at the militarized crackdown on pretty much the only movement recently that's tried to undermine the establishment. I mean, how do you suggest that people really try to undermine this two-party dictatorship, which is what I like to call it, when we have laws like H.R. 347, the NDAA, coupled with this kind of warrantless wiretapping going all across the nation? What do you think we can really do to break out of this?
Well, there's only one thing we can do. And the answer is really as simple as the nose on your face, but it'll be as difficult as climbing Mount Everest. And here's the simple answer: stop voting for them. I urge people, stop voting for Democrats and Republicans. We still have that power. Vote for anybody else. And that's really the only thing we have left to do, or the only way we can fight back. But getting the lemmings to do that is quite a task. If you vote for a third candidate or a third party candidate, whatever it may be, they always tell you you're wasting your vote if you do that because they can't win. Well, I proved that wrong in Minnesota, but that aside, you're not wasting your vote. I'd like to reverse that, if I may, and say you're wasting your vote if you vote for a Democrat or Republican, because you're going to get the same government. It does not matter which one that you elect. They are all in cahoots together to maintain their power and their control of the two-party, what they have, the two-party monopoly or dictatorship, as Ralph Nader and you have called it. And really the only recourse is to not vote for them. But getting the American public to do that is next to impossible, because because they also have the media in their back pocket. You know what they do to third-party candidates. They always call them wing nuts, and they got names for them, and they don't take them serious, and this and that. And so that leads the public to believe that you're only left with two choices. I like to look at it like this. It's like walking into the grocery store, and you go to the soft drink department, and the only thing available to you is Coke and Pepsi. They're both colas, one slightly sweeter than the other, but there's no Mountain Dew, there's no root beer, there's no 7-Up, there's nothing like that. All you have to choose from is Coke and Pepsi. And remember, the two gangs pick your president, because they make two choices of two gang members, and then you're expected to pick between that. And always remember what the late, great Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead said. He said, if you're made to pick the lesser of two evils, it means you're still picking evil.
But Jesse, Pepsi is the lesser of two evils. I mean, no, I love what you just said, because so many people have said that to me. Well, what? Are we supposed to, let Romney win? It's like, if we start making this establishment irrelevant, just like we are making the corporate media irrelevant by tuning into alternative media, then we will give a voice to third-party candidates. Then if we start crediting third-party candidates and really looking outside this establishment, maybe we'll give them some traction. But to just kind of, just put them out of your blind spot, I mean, that is what exactly the establishment wants you to do. And I really strongly agree with you, Jesse. I wanted to bring up a quote that you had in your book, a question, actually. You said, referring to the wars, you say, I'm 60 years old. My country's been at war more than half of my life. If we hadn't fought all these wars, do you think our economics would be as bad as they are today? Why do you think that we're fighting? We're in a state of perpetual warfare. Our economy pretty much runs on war. Why do you think this is, Jesse?
I don't know, but I'd like to correct that. I'd like to state now, I believe we've been at war all of my life. I was born in 1951, because let me add to the wars, the war on drugs. That is also a war. Millions or thousands of Americans are put in prison because they happen to use, quote, illegal drugs. Well, in a free society, how can you commit a crime against yourself? Which is what drug usage is. And then you look to Mexico, which is the results of our war on drugs. 20,000 people have died there in the last year. And then if you add the Cold War, which, we weren't shooting back and forth, but we were still building up armaments beyond belief. If you add the war on drugs and the Cold War, we've been at war my entire life.
Absolutely, and the DEA is out there killing people on other countries' soil, and also the control of these resources. The opium trade, 90% of the world's heroin's coming from Afghanistan. It really does beg the question, what is really going on, and why are we claiming to fight the drug war but also manage these drugs? Jesse, I wanted to just, in conclusion, your show, Conspiracy Theory on True TV, I read this column that one of the episodes, the police state episode, was it censored? Talk a little bit about what happened, and have you encountered any other censorship for coming out with issues like 9/11 Truth, the police state, all of these very, very important issues that are completely uncovered by the corporate media? Talk a little bit about censorship and what you've encountered.
Well, yeah, we did get censored. We did a show called Are We Turning Into a Police State, where we discovered a bill that Homeland Security had approved that would order FEMA to build 6 detainment camps throughout the United States of America. And allegedly they're being built in case we have another Katrina tragedy. We'll have a place to put all the people, 6 of them throughout the United States. Well, apparently they didn't want that out to the public because that show got censored. True TV won't even acknowledge we did it today. Let me add, the 3rd season of Conspiracy Theory starts November 7th, 10 Eastern, 9 Central. We did 8 shows, but they're only going to air 7 of them because the 8th show we did on the TSA at the airports. And apparently that must have ruffled some feathers, and they got some interesting things in mind for you out at the airports to come, so they don't want it on TV. And what it is, they're creating these wristbands so that you'll be able to pass through the airport and you won't be subject to search anymore because it'll have all the vital information. On the surface, it sounds great, but here's what they don't want you to know. When you wear these wristbands, they will be able to disable you if you wear them, just like you got hit with a taser. So anyone in the airport can be disabled at any time when these new TSA wristbands hit the market. I'm not sure when it'll happen, but that's what the show was about, and that's apparently why it won't air on television.
Is there anywhere else where we can see that, or?
No.
Yeah, I just read about how
unfortunately it's out of my hands because True TV controls the money and they make the decisions on what will or won't make it on their station. Yeah, the TSA expanding, you know, the Viper teams all across the nation. These body scanners, they have plans to put them in rail, you know, bus depots and train stations. I mean, it really is out of control, Jesse. The RFID chips and student IDs. I mean, where is this all going to go? If I can interrupt, the thing we need to understand is that our Constitution and Bill of Rights are in shambles now. These two parties could care less about those documents. I'm a great believer in the fabric of this country, and the fabric of it is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And we need to force our elected officials in government to stand by those rules, because a government that doesn't have a Constitution or Bill of Rights is meaningless. Absolutely. When we have a constitutional law professor going out passing things like the NDAA, it really is up to we, the people, to take this country back. Thank you so much for coming on, Jesse, and your book, Democrypts and Rebloodlicans. Everyone, check it out. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you. My pleasure.